Well, it's going to be another video on the topic of avoidance, but that kind of avoidance that others assume about you. There's a lot of judgment out there, hot takes, criticism that's often not very constructive is popular. Controversy, get you clicks. There's a part of a lot of people that like to see a confident person get torn down because they like something. But it's easy to assume that someone's avoiding something, especially if you are in the habit of judging others' character. Men are particularly prone to this, and thinking that because of this tone, this facial expression, this particular action, that you understand who they are and what they're avoiding. And at the deepest level, you're the only one that can know if you're avoiding something. People lie to themselves, people obscure it, people come up with many excuses. In my last video, I talked about some of the excuses in some subcultures that are very prevalent these days, that people allow themselves to have. You know, in my experience, I've seen this very common reflex that's quite simplistic in competitive communities. Again, particularly men are prone to this, ultimately what is a shortcoming. To assume that everyone's the same, to assume that because maybe you faced some kind of thing that you avoided for a while and then you overcame, that someone else is facing that same kind of thing just because it appears similar. Or maybe you helped someone else get over their block or their avoidance, and you think that someone that you're observing is like that person that you helped. And typically in competitive communities, a lot of the men have kind of calcified their understanding of the breadth of human existence, of personality, of spiritual expression, of how people face challenges and what they need to do. In the Third Strike community, which I've been part of in one form or another for quite a number of years, I got sort of into it on shoryuken.com, an old website that people would get together on, and had a bunch of forums to talk about, in my case, Third Strike, the game that I still play. Don't really play any other games. These things that we take a break from the difficult work of actually living in reality. It's important, right? And some people make games their entire life, and that's serious, and they're in that sphere. But life is bigger than games. Some people fool themselves because they are fans of, say, sports or something, to think that life is just a game and it's all about competition, it's all about trying to climb the hierarchy, and that's an aspect of life, but life is much bigger. And people are much more complex and diverse than how a person fits into a competitive structure. So I've encountered this time and time again in the Third Strike community, especially when I was starting to face and deal with migraines, which gave particular challenges to actually playing the competitive game that was represented in the community that I was part of, and that I enjoyed and used as a tool to kind of get away from the actual work of life, the hard stuff I was going through, you know, dealing with migraines, and also my sick mom, and then my sick dad, dealing with death, dealing with grief, trying to learn about that aspect of humanity and learn about myself through those challenges. It was very clear that in the Third Strike community, vast majority of people, 99% of people, were trying to fit in somewhere, were trying to gain better status, were trying to show off, and really just cared about how well they did in a video game. And it was really sad because it kind of colored the whole way that they related to other people, the way that they maybe tried to, and in some cases failed to, support someone that was actually going through real struggles in life. and try to encourage people to improve themselves. It was very base, it was very juvenile, and it's a video game, right? So obviously there's a sort of kid-like juvenile association with video games, although video games are the dominant medium these days. But really, it's also represented in sports, and I've seen this very much. And again, sports is just a game. It controls a huge portion of the entertainment industry and the economy in some ways, and can be very, very positive for people's self-improvement and belonging and community and all this kind of stuff. But cooperation is far, far more powerful and has far more potential than competition. We must compete. We are still animals in a certain way. Aspects of us are still animals. Competition will be there, but cooperation is of a higher order of human understanding and expression. Cooperation allows greater achievements, and ultimately it's cooperation that has got us to where we are in the good ways. You know, some aspects of this society and this culture that we live in and all our achievements are definitely going down the wrong path. We are disconnecting from spirit, disconnecting from nature, we are harming the environment, we're harming each other. But some people would say it's that competition. The market will tell the truth as to what is the best, and we all must follow what is the best. And there may be best for you in a moment, and there may be best for a group or community in a moment, but best is very subjective ultimately. And we can't get lost in relativism, right? Within a moment, there are best or better, but competition is of a lower order than cooperation. And I ran into this mental, spiritual, personality limitation in the Third Strike community that's also represented in sporting and competitive communities. Again, quite often, these are very prevalent in men. And so as I was dealing with challenges of actually like looking at and playing the game, giving me severe facial twitches and pain such that my vision got blurry, or my eyes were kind of twitching and blinking and I couldn't actually see, a lot of people just sort of thought that these were excuses. A lot of people would talk shit as I was trying to explain it, especially when playing online, which is one of the primary ways that I played for quite a while as I was going through really tough stuff and really was less interested and capable of interacting in social communities, you know, getting together and actually playing with people in person. I created a number of those opportunities with some guys over the years in Toronto and, you know, surrounding areas to play Third Strike. But I primarily interacted with the online community, whether that's playing online or speaking with others online in a forum, or there's a group on Facebook, for example, for Third Strike. And I just time and time again ran into this limitation, this immaturity. As I was dealing with the death of parents and that kind of extreme challenge, that grief, this health limitation that made it hard to actually play the game, everybody kind of had this like simplistic idea of what the value in playing Third Strike should be. For me, it wasn't even necessarily about winning, although at times that was something that I strived for, to win, right? But really I was playing it to get a break from the real work in my life that was much more complicated, that wasn't about winning or losing. It was about enduring, it was about loving, it was about helping and supporting. But Third Strike was an escape at times, or a much less taxing, in spite of migraines that it would give me sometimes, less taxing thing to engage in, you know, at the really difficult, dark places. Movies, TV, radio, social gatherings just weren't interesting. They seemed kind of trivial. They drained me. They took more than they gave. I couldn't maintain the focus on the TV shows and the movies that I used to enjoy. And Third Strike was immediate. It was engaging. It was physical. It's something you had to like pay complete constant attention to, and that when you're really in the zone, it would create a flow state. And that kind of flow state can bring all aspects of your mind and your focus and even your spirit into a single unified point. And that was a wonderful way to get, again, a break from really complicated challenges in my life that had no clear solutions. There was no way to win. And so it was one of the ways that I endured. And, there's a number of players that had bad fucking attitudes that just cared about winning and that kind of built their whole life around how much money they made, their status in maybe the Third Strike community or whatever group of men that they were in. And it just was immature. It was just immature. It was boring. I felt sad for them. I felt pity on these guys because maybe they hadn't got to that point where some of these sort of material achievements just don't mean as much or are almost meaningless. They didn't have that understanding. They hadn't reached that period in their life of that spiritual challenge that makes their spirit grow, that breaks them in some cases, but forces them to get up and keep trying. The death of loved ones, sickness in yourself or others, will do that, will bring those lessons to you and force you to grow if you continue, if you keep trying to figure it out. And even realize it can't be figured out, but just keep going, keep helping. And I encountered this thing with individual players in the Third Strike community and sort of like groups. There's different sort of subgroups that are often attached to sometimes an area online or maybe a specific city. And some cities, particularly one city that's good at winning, but has some real rough edges and ultimately was one of the most self-indulgent and immature subgroups in the Third Strike community. That really, they were great at the game, right? But most of them had massive egos and kind of justified being either a bully or just a complete asshole or just not helping, trying to organize other people and people's challenges into this system of winning and losing. And I just didn't care about the winning and losing part at various points during my journey. And they were incapable. Many of the subgroups in the Third Strike community were incapable of understanding something beyond their sort of petty struggle to gain status, to appear like the big man or the winner or sit atop their pile of boys. And so as I was trying to figure out how to help my parents more or manage and mitigate the migraines that, maybe 7-8 years ago were new, were very overwhelming. It just seemed like excuses when I would talk about a particularly bad connection, let's say, playing certain players online. The screen would jump around, would get very jittery in an uncontrollable way. Sometimes it would be more jittery, sometimes it would be kind of consistently jumpy images, sometimes it would jump a lot and then stop and then jump a lot. Sometimes it depended on the character that you were playing and the kind of animation that character had in their movements. But trying to explain that I didn't want to play a certain person because their connection was bad, there's this reflex that you're trying to avoid losing. And I realized that a lot of people couldn't see beyond their desire to win. Thought that the only reason to play a game like that was to try to win and to try to be the best. And that's definitely an aspect of it. But again, life is more complicated, and that's not why I was playing it. Now, even today, as I have a much better handle on the migraines and I'm not dealing with sick and dying parents anymore, and I've done a shitload of work in the last 9-10 months to deal with my grief from going through that challenge and getting up again and again and again and getting broken and still getting up and moving through it and helping. I'm in a much better place and don't struggle with, say, for example, a really jittery or choppy connection the way that I used to. But part of one of the things that I realized is that it was a certain player's energy. It was their bad attitude, or even something that wasn't to do with the way that they spoke, but just playing them, interacting with them. It was draining. It wasn't worth it. Because I wanted to win games, but I was often just playing to pass the time, or maybe refocus my mind if I was feeling a little scattered. And that was actually my primary goal. That's where my values were. And so to play someone who was a troll or just an asshole, it was actually, from an adult point of view, it was a waste of my time. It was contrary to the goals that I was engaging in the activity for. Now, currently, as I still play, there are a few players that I don't play for these reasons. And I still sometimes get these responses where people just get mad that you don't want to play them. And again, it's a lack of maturity. It's boys in men's bodies. And I found that there was a lot of boys in men's bodies that talked a big game, that maybe had various aspects of their life in order. But their spirit, their personality was missing things, was underdeveloped, was lopsided. They cared too much about winning. And at a certain point, I got sick of feeling pity for them and just would not engage. It wasn't avoidance, because I might play them one game every once in a while if we get matched up, but then I won't play because it's not worth my time, especially if the connection's bad. Some of these guys have a really bad attitude. There's one who's just would regularly show up in lobbies where players would gather in an online setting to play together over and over, repeated games, and would just keep showing up in the lobbies. I'd keep leaving. Sometimes we'd have communications. I'd explain it to this guy. He would brag about the money he made. He would make all these accusations about avoiding, facing him or something like that. And I would explain that he just wasn't worth my time. And he cared more than I did. It was sad. I felt pity for this man. This boy. I felt pity for some of these boys. If someone doesn't want to play you, get on with your life. Who cares? Play someone else. Why'd you have to chase someone around? It's sad. It's sad shit. It's a lack. It's a lack. It's the part of these men that is not grown up yet, has not seen what is truly important in life. And there's times where we must compete. There's times where we must climb hierarchies. But that is not the final point of life. And if you are a man that thinks that it's just all about status and just all about climbing the hierarchy, you're gonna miss out on really important growth to see the full breadth of human existence and human development, and you're gonna oversimplify things. And maybe one day when you get sick or someone else gets sick and can't be the best, you're not gonna be able to move into that, to face that with integration and courage. It's not going to make sense to you. Maybe you're just going to be negative. Maybe you're not going to want to show up, or you're going to give up on someone that really could use your help.